Hello everybody, good morning. Welcome back to the stream, as usual. Today what we're going to be doing is something. No, I think there's some changes that I want to make to the Alchemy. Not major changes right now. I just want to make like one change at a time and test it out. There's one thing that I want to do with the Alchemy though, that I think would be interesting to just check out and see what we can get to work. And then I think I need to spend some time working on some new art for the Grow board event, which I already have in place. I just need to finish it and integrate that into the game. So I think we'll probably spend the majority of the stream doing that, but we will see. We will see what happens. Anyway, before I get into it, I want to remind you that Alchemortis is available for wish listing. So if you are interested in dark fantasy roguelite auto battlers, definitely check it out. Give it a wish list. I'd appreciate that. You can also support the game on Patreon. If you subscribe at the top tier here for the Patreon for at least 1 month, I'll send you an Alchemortis Steam key when the game launches. So it's like a pre-purchase and your name will be listed in the in-game Alchemortis credits You also get other perks like unlimited access to my courses and so on and so forth. And you could also pick up one of my Udemy courses. These will teach you how to build complete games in the Godot engine. This is a great way to support me, and it's a great way to learn how to build games. You can also join the Discord that's linked in the description below. Okay, with all those ads out of the way, let's go ahead and say hello to everybody. Hello, Clickertail, welcome back, good morning. Hello, Ninja Link. I just saw your post in the Alchemortis feedback channel. So I haven't responded to it yet, obviously. I literally just read it before hopping on the stream, but I think there's a lot of interesting ideas in there. So we'll definitely be mulling those over. Hello, Chris. Good morning to you. Good morning, good morning. Okay. So the one change that I want to make for the Alchemy right now is I want to... So one thing that I noticed when I was just playing myself is that it feels really bad to do an Alchemy and to lose abilities, especially when you only have a card with like 2 abilities on it and you get a card with 1 ability out. So I was thinking about it, and it's like, well, I don't really know if there's a reason to remove an ability. I think what I could do is I could do either it gains 0 new ability, or not 0 new abilities. Basically, when I'm talking about ability count, it's like the max ability count. So if a card can support a maximum of 2 abilities and I throw it into Alchemy, I'm thinking maybe that it shouldn't go below 2 abilities. It should either retain the current number of abilities that it has, or it should gain 1 ability. I'm thinking that will at least feel a little bit better. Now the problem with that though is that what is the problem with that? Let's say that I alchemize 2 skeletons together. Any day now. If I alchemize... Oh, I don't have skeletons. Let's go find them. So if I alchemize 2 skeletons together, they each deal 4 damage. With the current system, it's possible to basically get a skeleton out that does nothing different. So, like this, right? I just alchemized skeletons together and all I got was the same exact skeleton. Now, a certain amount of that is just going to be, hey, the player should know not to do something like that. But I also think that this chance to remove abilities, yeah, I don't think that's something that I want to do. So where am I actually? Rand sign here. Card to new ability count. So what I'm going to do here is, one thing I was considering is just make it always add 1 new ability to the card. I mean, we could try that. We could try that. I was worried originally about if I always granted 1 additional ability. I was worried about cards getting way too powerful, way too easy, but having to do multiple rounds of alchemy on a card to keep increasing its ability count, while also having to manage the negative abilities that are building up on it, I think that's actually going to be fine. So what I'm going to do here is, instead of randomly increasing or decreasing the ability count, I'm just going to always add 1. I think my options are to add 0 or 1, but I'm going to start with 1 here. So you're guaranteed now in the alchemy system that you're always going to have 1 additional ability added to the card. Now the way that the alchemy system works currently is that it will still randomize all of the abilities that end up on the output cards based on the inputs. So it's possible that you could lose, for example, the damage that exists on the skeleton. However, going back to what Ninja Link wrote in the Discord, Ninja Link had an interesting idea, which is to preserve the base abilities of the cards, meaning that any ability that gets added, so when it goes through the alchemy process, it retains the abilities that it already had, or at least its base abilities, and then any abilities that get added to it are randomized. Now, I kind of like that idea. The problem is that the output of the alchemy is still random, right? So I could put 4 different cards in the alchemy, and I only get 3 alchemy outputs, which means that at least 1 card is not going to be present in the output, and that could be the card that I was hoping to add abilities to. So rather than preserving the base abilities, I think what I would rather do is introduce a reagent that could do that. So a reagent could say, this card will be present in the output and retain all of its current abilities. Something like that. So give the player control over that, rather than making that an automatic behavior, I think could be interesting. But anyway, let's just try it with this first. Hello, Dragon Apple / Evan. I'm going to lurk, sounds good. Hello, Pascal H. Good to see you. I hate losing synergies abilities I built my board around. It made me stop using alchemy for my best cards altogether out of fear of losing something essential. Yeah, I think that is a very, very critical problem, Wuius, and that's something that I definitely want to fix. And I think that has to be fixed through a combination of reagents, but it also has to be fixed through just a changing of how the alchemy system works. So really, the main considerations that I have to make are, what capabilities should I give via reagents, and what should just be the base alchemy system behavior, right? How about a way to extract abilities into a reagent and then use that reagent to alchemize it into another card? Yeah, we could do that. Dang, I was gonna do some art on this stream, but I actually think that maybe working on some of these alchemy things might be more fun, and also while the brain juices are flowing. So maybe this will be an alchemy only stream. Okay, I'm sorry. Can you give me like 2 to 3 minutes? I gotta take a quick break real quick. Sorry. I know we just started the stream, but I'll be right back. All right, I'm sorry about that. We're back though. We're ready to go again. So let's see how this works. Let's see how this works. So I'm just going to test a bunch of cards, I suppose. Giant squid. Let's do a skeleton warrior. What else? Incense. I keep forgetting all the cards that I have in my game. Let's see. Let's try a dowsing rod. Rog. Okay. So we're going to see how this feels now with this alchemy change. Oops, I forgot to enable test player cards. All right, so we've got this. So if I do the alchemy system here, put the giant squid in there. Oh, I still have the negative alchemies being applied. I should probably get rid of that. Anyway. So that skeleton warrior got 1 new ability. The giant squid got 1 new ability. It's got 6 abilities and no negatives, which is nice. I think... Okay. Let me do something really quick. I need to remove from the run manager here. Populate, let's see. Populate player cards. Get rid of the negative alchemies there. Just so that we're not getting any noise that we don't need. Hello, Courier Games. Welcome, welcome. What is everyone's go-to breakfast? I do not eat breakfast. I have coffee, and that's it. Okay, let's see. Squid, skeleton. Now, I think this is wrong. 0 to 4 negative abilities. That seems wrong to me. It is wrong. So there are no negative abilities, which makes sense because the skeleton warriors can support up to 2 abilities without going to negatives. So I need to fix that text, but I think this feels a lot better to me. That definitely feels a lot better because now I'm not losing abilities. Now there still is the problem of like potentially breaking your synergies. So I think... So again, one option is have the base card abilities preserved automatically by the alchemy system. The other option is to use a reagent to do that. The problem is that what is the problem here? So the alchemy always puts 3 options out. But if I had a reagent that, for example, preserved all of the base abilities of a card, I guess I don't really see a reason why this couldn't have like a 4th option. So yeah, the thing about preserving all the abilities of a card through a reagent is, let's say that I did that 3 or 4 times. So I said I want to preserve this card. I put 4 cards in there, and then I applied a reagent that I applied 4 reagents that each preserve the abilities of each of the 4 cards. That should mean that there would be 4 alchemy outputs, but there's only ever 3. So I would need to think about what to do about that. We can see now that this one got a negative ability because these two got negative abilities because they got their abilities got increased beyond the number of abilities that they can support. Okay. So, yeah. Firstly, I think that's already better. So I think I like that change. We put the candle here. We put the dowsing rod here. What does that do? Yeah, okay. That makes sense. We take this out and we put this here. We randomize those. How did the candle get... Oh, no, that's right. Yeah. So the candle had 1 ability going into it. It added another ability, and because that is beyond the number of abilities that can naturally support, it got a negative alchemy. Okay, that makes sense. Let me also go ahead and add honey, and I want to just see how this works here. So what should happen, this is also a little bit of an awkward situation, which is where if I take the candle and I put that with the squid and I do that and I get a candle out that has 1 negative ability, I take that out, I put that back in, and then I put that with the honey, and then I do this. Does that spit out a candle that's largely the same? Yeah, it does. Okay. But it just doesn't have the negative ability with it. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so I think maybe this stream will be an alchemy stream. Maybe we'll just play around with this, see what we can do. Bagel. If I need to go to school, then a cup of soup, otherwise it'll just be pot noodle. Very nice. Finding the reagent to preserve the base card abilities is too random, and you may have runs where you never find it as well. Yeah, and I think that's okay. I mean, I can see the argument for the alchemy system preserving the base abilities of the card naturally, but... let me think. I'm trying to think of what I would think. Like, I do want to encourage the player to... So, for example, like for a candle here, a candle naturally has a very... a relatively low turn cooldown and a 10% crit chance. What I want to enable is I want to enable the player to say, okay, these stats up here are good. I just don't want to apply fire, right? I would much rather have, for example, poison on the candle instead. So I'd, try to put poison on it. And there we go. I got a legendary candle with 2 poison. But I get this candle here, which has the 8 turn cooldown, 10% crit, and it applies poison twice. So now I've gotten rid of the fire. If I were to preserve the base fire ability, this would still have a fire on it and also apply poison. So I want the player to be able to do that. I want the player to be able to completely swap out the abilities on a card for completely different ones. And if the alchemy system by default preserves the base abilities, then that's going to be very hard to do. Now I could reverse it. I could say, well, that's the default behavior, but if you use a reagent, this reagent will like clear all of the abilities off the card or whatever and put new abilities there. Hello, Falsefe, welcome. I have no idea what's happening. I think it's easier to understand the game if you read the Steam page. As a piece of feedback to Firebelly, I don't think the game is super intuitive just by watching it, but I'm sure it will become more clear as polish is added. Yeah, I mean, the thing too is like, the game doesn't have any like player education elements either. So I need to do like a comprehensive tutorial, but also like when I'm working on the game on these streams, I'm like bouncing around, putting a bunch of debug data in place, testing a bunch of random things. So you're not really seeing like what the gameplay loop is like when I'm working on it, which is another, you know, I guess the streams are not a great way of like seeing how the game actually plays out because I'm just doing a bunch of random nonsense. But I know the game is an auto battler, just how that alchemy works is a very black box. So that is another problem that I want to address. So there's a challenge, right, with the alchemy system. The alchemy system has to be intuitive and predictable to a certain degree, while also still being that vehicle for creating like random outputs, right? Like random legendary outputs or getting like hitting the perfect abilities on that card. Well, you know what I could do? Here's another radical idea. Instead of having the player only able to choose one card from the alchemy output, I could just give them all of the cards. Would that break things too much? So instead of being able to only choose one card from the output, you just get every output. That is a very radical idea compared to the approach that I've taken. I'm trying to think if that would that fix a bunch of problems? So you wouldn't be losing any cards. You'd still get the same number of cards out of it. You'd still have a good chunk of all of the abilities that you put into the alchemy to begin with, which means that you'd be able to go back and like re-alchemize things if necessary. Like you could potentially recover from a bad alchemy output by re-alchemizing again. Because I think right now the problem is that you put a bunch of cards into the alchemy and that dramatically depletes your card resources. And then also if the alchemy output is not what you're looking for, then you've basically just suffered a huge net loss. Whereas really the goal of the alchemy system is more so to help chase the build. So anyway, interesting. Let's see what you guys think about that. My boss paid me €600 for 20 full days working. I work under the table, so he's literally exploiting me. Uh-oh. Oh, sorry to hear that. I won't tell anyone. I won't tell the European authorities that you're working and not paying taxes. Hello, Snupbill. Thank you for your IDR 10,000. Very much appreciate that. Thank you, thank you. It's always very generous. And of course, welcome back to the stream with the message yummers. Yuppers? What? That's not the message. Yeah, very true. I pretty much only see the screen you're on now. Yeah. That breaks the economy. Well, I mean, yeah, like there's going to be a lot of changes that I'm going to be making here that are going to break something. So we don't need to necessarily worry about the second and third order effects. I mostly just need to get the alchemy system nailed down, and then whatever side effects or problems that causes, we can fix separately. Luckily, I can relax by working on my projects with AI-generated Iranian jazz in the background. We really live in a strange era, yeah. Because I could just sell the cards I don't want, yeah. That's too OP. You always get better card, lose nothing, 0 drawback, and you still can sell remaining cards or sacrifice them. The problem is that what is a better card? Right? Like, I can't necessarily guarantee that you'll always get a better card because the abilities that get placed on the outputs may not be what you're looking for. If you get the same cards out as you put in, I think that could work. Otherwise, I don't think it changes much. Yeah, I was thinking that instead of it randomly generating 3 outputs, it it would modify each card that you input in a certain way or in a random way, and then it would spit out all of those cards. So you would basically, it would be like instead of going into this cauldron and then being completely random on the other side, you would get all of your input cards back, but all of them would be modified in accordance with the alchemy system. Alchemy should never result in a worse card. Yeah, that's true. But again, it's like, what is better or worse? Like, a card could be better on paper, meaning that it has a better turn cooldown and it's got more abilities on it. But if the abilities aren't what you're looking for, then it could just end up being a worse card, right? But if we want to just say better means that it has more abilities, then yeah, I think that's true. How is a player supposed to know what the alchemy produces? Trial and error? That is a question that I have not yet resolved. This is why I'm trying to... The reason why I'm spending so much time on the alchemy system, number one, is because I want it to be the core feature of the game. But also number two is I'm trying to come up with a way to make it, like I said, predictable enough. Like, I want players to have confidence that they're probably going to get cards that are stronger than what they put in. But there still has to be an element of randomness to it. And so I don't want to do a bunch of like... What am I trying to say? I'm trying to make the algorithm as not black boxy as possible, meaning that I don't want to do a bunch of like, you know, Gaussian distributions or normal distributions for the randomness, and like, you know, oh well, I was doing a bunch of stuff earlier where I was like, oh, I'll add up the total number of abilities and then divide them by 2, and that's like the median point for how many abilities each card is going to have as the output. That's like that's too hard to understand for a player. Like, that's too hard to... Yeah, that's too hard to intuit as a player through trial and experimentation with the alchemy system. So I'm trying to do a simpler rule set for the alchemy system, like, oh, the input cards, the cards that you put in will always have one ability added to them, and the random ability that gets added to them, or random abilities that get added to them, will be pulled from the pool of abilities that you put in the input, right? Or like the turn cooldown that the card ends up having will be randomly chosen from the turn cooldowns that are in the inputs. Stuff like that. Alchemized cards are unsellable. Then it would take up space in your stack, and that's cursed. Well, if I do introduce the alchemy residue mechanic, I could make alchemized cards sell for residue instead of blood. I see your issue. The cards don't exist in isolation, so alchemy results in a better card, but worse card in relation to your other cards. Right. Why exactly is it random at all? Well, there has to be an element of randomness to it. Because if I just say, take all of the abilities that are from the inputs and put them all on the output cards, then that's just going to increase the player power way too fast, way too much. And what I'm trying to avoid is the problem where you have a card that has 11 abilities on it, and they all do something different. It's impossible to keep that in your mind as a player, and it's pretty much impossible to make a build that makes maximal use of all of those 11 abilities. So what I would much rather do with the alchemy system is give the players the tools to create very focused cards with a smaller set of abilities. That's kind of more so what I'm going for. Like, I want the player to be able to create cards that are going to work well with their specific build. So there has to be an element of randomness there. That's why I introduced the negative alchemy system, to discourage the player from adding just a whole boatload of abilities to a card. I'm trying to disincentivize that, so that's why there's negative alchemy abilities. So the more abilities you put on a card, the more negative abilities will also be accrued on that card. And so it kind of becomes a wash in terms of the power of that card. So yeah. I think that negative alchemy system works. It solves that problem. But there are these other problems here. How about make placement matters in alchemy? I do have some things like that with the reagents. Have you ever played Persona? I have not, no. I think somebody has mentioned the fusion system before, though. Yeah, I do have that. There's an acceptable degree of randomized output, but the current implementation is too random. The fusion system in SMT Persona has a type chart that shows what type of demon you will fuse. The alchemy reminds me of Binding of Isaac upgrades. People never knew what two upgrades would create, but it was hella fun, and sooner or later they got a feel for it and know what works and what not. Yeah, I think my alchemy system needs to be a little bit more predictable to accomplish something like that. As long as every upgrade has a certain amount of power, I feel like that should solve your issue because no random should ever be bad. Or maybe you want to incentivize discovery in the alchemy system. Like all combinations need to yield a positive result. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I kind of like the idea of just giving the player all of the outputs. Because I think part of the problem is that even with the randomized outputs, you may only be able to choose a card that is like not great. Like each of the options presented to you may not be great. But if you're able to get all of the cards back, then you might be able to salvage it by doing another round or two of alchemy. You might be able to recombine them again to actually get the card you were after. And the other thing about the other thing I didn't think about with the alchemy is that being able to only choose one output, even if you put 5 cards in the input, being able to only choose one output means that you've lost 4 cards, which is a huge amount of cards to lose. But also you have to consider the sell price of all those cards. So you could be losing, 10 to 20 blood as well from your total wealth, in addition to the alchemy cost, in addition to potentially getting a card that's not that great. So the more I think about it, the more I kind of like the idea of just spitting out all of the inputs with randomization applied to them, and then letting the player take all of the cards out and do something with them. I think that could work. That's probably going to create, secondary and tertiary issues in the game, but we can address those. I understand the argument for preserving base abilities. The problem is that with the preserving of base abilities, I don't think that's going to be super... It'll be intuitive if you're alchemizing a card for the first time, but as a card builds up abilities, it will become unclear what are the base abilities and what aren't, especially if I introduce reagents that remove base abilities. It's well, how does the player know what the base abilities are to remove? I could denote them with a different icon or something. I mean, there are ways to do it, but I'd rather not go into that complexity just yet. I think there are other things I can do to solve the problems without doing something like that. Can there be optimal and less optimal? But there can be optimal and less optimal, but in my opinion, there should never be a bad result from doing alchemy. Yeah. You also need to consider the resurrection cost. Right. So that is the thing. I think that was probably a compounding issue as well, is cards are used as resources for the alchemy system, but they're also used as resources for resurrecting. So anytime you engage in alchemy, you kind of reduced your ability to recover in a resurrection scenario. So I do think that this could fix things. So maybe we'll go ahead and do that. Make alchemy always increase ability count by 1. Okay, I'm gonna create a new branch for this. Alchemy. What? Rework? Something like that. I don't know. Maybe multiply some value on the card. For example, it deals 4 damage and we add times 1.5 in the modifier. We'll guarantee the card to gain power. Maybe suggest the player to change the build if it gets upgraded he wasn't looking for. Yeah. The problem is the abilities themselves don't scale independently of the card. The abilities scale based off of the card tier. So I can't really like change an individual number on an ability. Not with the current system anyway. I can tell from experience the text length switching in Godot's UI system can be quite a pain. Oh, really? Okay. Well, yeah, there's a couple of things in Godot that are like that. Kind of a pain. All right, well, let's figure this out then. So where do I start? So I want to make all of the outputs available. So this is going to require actually quite a few changes here. So this get randomized output, this is going to need to change completely. Yeah, we're going to need actually quite a bit of changes here. We are going to need quite a bit of changes. So this is just 3 here. So I'm going to change this. We're going to do public void, no, public base card. We'll do a list base card, get outputs. We'll pass in the alchemy manager here. Okay. And I'm going to make this private. Okay. So for get outputs, what we want to do is we want to do for each var card in non-reagent input cards. We are going to do this. Var result is equal to new list based card, base card result dot add get randomized output return result. Okay. But in this get randomized output here, what I'm going to do is I am going to put this in here. Base card, input card. I'm going to pass this in here. Okay. So get randomized output. Legendary outputs remaining greater than 0. So this is the problem here. Shoot. I probably want to shuffle this. We'll figure out what to do about this later. The problem now is that since this is going to be ordered, the legendary chant or the legendary output, the legendary effect will be applied to basically the first card in the board. So make legendary non-deterministic. Okay. So we're going to get rid of this random card ID here. So this goes away. Card to new ability count. So we actually have the input card here. So let's do this. Random card ID. We're going to get rid of this. Abilities to take. This is card. Yeah, we don't need to do this anymore. We can just grab this input card now, since we have a reference to that input card. Okay, is legendary. Base card create from ID. This is going to be our input card, card definition resource.id. Okay. Non-alchemizable abilities. Non-reagent input cards where card is equal to input card, or wait. Yeah, card is equal to input card. Okay. Okay. This card to original ability count. I'm gonna have to figure out what to do about these legendary cards as well. I guess we'll just keep this the way that it is. Input card. Oh, this is card to original ability count. So this actually is useless, so we'll get rid of this. The ability is already being increased by 1 every time. Okay, where is my error here? Here we go. So config, this needs to be get outputs. And we are going to go ahead and set this new card options equal to config.getOutputs. And then we get rid of this. We need to pass in the Alchemy manager, so this. So that will get the outputs for every non-reagent input card. We're going to get a randomized output and return that. Okay. So that should be good. Now we actually have to make changes to, let's see. Possible output card IDs, that can go away, I suppose. Okay. So alchemized cards here, this is called in the Alchemy container. New cards. Set Alchemy output cards. Resize board and place cards. Okay. So now this is where I need to make all the cards takeable. If I equals cards.length -1, back buffer copy, visible fade. So yeah, this is going to need to change. So I can actually simplify this. Alchemy container. So we've got the mask viewport. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. We don't need this anymore. We don't need this back buffer copy. Delete that. Fade color. What is this? Oh, I don't need this either. Delete. Okay. So we simplify that. Now we need to get rid of all that stuff. Back buffer copy goes away. Mask viewport, mask sprite, fade color rect goes away. Price container. Okay, I think that's fine. We're going to get rid of this. Fade color rect material. Get rid of that. Card fade tween. We don't need that. We don't need this. Okay, we can get rid of this now. We can get rid of this. Get rid of all this. I don't need this process method at all. Don't need this. Play fade out. We don't need these. Is this even called anywhere? No. Get rid of that. Okay, reset state. Card mouse events manager. I don't need any of this. Don't need any of this. Fade card selection in. Am I calling this anywhere? Okay, I don't need this. I don't need that. Don't need this. Don't need that. Oh wait, no. I do need that one. On mask sprite draw. Don't need this. This feels so good to delete all this stuff. Okay. Let me just see if that works. It's not going to work. It's not going to let me take more than one card, but let me just make sure I haven't horrifically broken anything yet. Have fun, gotta hop out. All right, have a good day. And hope to see you again. I just learned that MTV signed off yesterday. Like the channel MTV. You know, I'm honestly surprised that cable TV even still exists anymore. I'm always of two minds when deleting code. In some ways it feels good, in other ways it feels bad. No, I get that. Yeah, there can be a bad feeling of like, oh, I spent so much time getting this code to work and now I'm deleting it, but that's how it goes, you know? So let's see if this works. So if I put 2 cards in, I should get just 2 cards out, and they should be each modified somewhat randomly. Yeah, so the giant squid gained 4 damage, and the skeleton warrior gained 2 poison. And I should be able to just take one of these, and that resets automatically. Okay, so far so good. So far so good. Now, do I have like an on card transferred? Here we go. On card transferred. If not, is alchemy output available or from inventory return? So in here, we need to do if board dot get cards board inventory component get cards on board dot length is equal to 0. We will reset the state. Okay, so that fix should actually just allow me to do this. Final broadcast video was kill the radio star, which was the first thing that played on the station. Interesting. Hello, Defected. Welcome back. How goes this day? It's going well so far. Can't complain. I've got nothing to complain about. So now I should be able to take both of these out. And that will reset. Interesting. So I think one thing that I'll probably need to do is make it more obvious that this is an alchemy output. Why does this not have a negative ability now? Oh, because I put honey in there. Right. Okay, that makes sense. So now I could take both of these out. Nice. Okay. Candle, frog, incense, dowsing rod. Apply 2 poison, 50%, reduce remaining turns. So now I get to take all of these. So all of those have been alchemized. And I can do stuff with them. How do you handle outlining things? I have an outline shader. So these outlines here, those are just, it's just a shader. You can find one on godotshaders.com or .net or something. Yeah. Okay, so I get to keep all of my cards now, which is good. And I can keep redoing this as long as I have blood for it. What happens if I just keep recombining all these? So I can just keep recombining them as much as I want, I suppose. Is that a problem? Ooh, a legendary incense. Oh, this candle has a lot of self-paralysis. I actually kind of want to see what happens. Let's see what happens. Oh. So I need to make that more obvious that you can take those cards now. Maybe I can do like some kind of particle effect or something. Oh, boss fight. Well, let's see. So this candle should paralyze itself for quite a long time. Paralyzed for 12 turns. Yeah. Oh my gosh, wait, what just destroyed me? Why did I die so quick? Oh my gosh. What just happened? Why did I die so quickly? Oh my gosh, it's the field mouse, the field mice with the swarm ability. Dang. Getting absolutely destroyed. Okay, well, swarm still might be a problem, but shaders are the best thing ever for polishing a game. Yeah, they're very, very, very good tools to have. All right, does anyone have any thoughts so far about all of the alchemy outputs being available to you? So rather than, you know, discombobulating everything, you just get the exact inputs back out and they will be randomized still, but you get to use all of them. Any thoughts on this so far? Any thoughts? I think you should use both. What do you mean by both? Is it possible to take a good build and make it bad by changing stats? That currently is possible. What I'm trying to do is make it less possible. So I'm trying to make it so that the alchemy is generally a net positive for you, rather than right now there's too much risk of it being a negative. I want it to be a net positive in the sense that the card always gets more abilities, but you know, again, like a bad or good result kind of depends on what build you're going for. I know you deleted all of that code, but to me, I like the idea of getting a random card out, but I also like the idea of keeping my cards. I think it might be too much reagent needed. So you don't like all of the output cards. Hmm. I think I'm conflicted. I like that it's a pure upgrade, but it kind of takes away from the player's decision making for the run building. I prefer all the cards to losing them, but I also like the idea of being able to get rid of cards I don't like and turn them into something new. You can somehow give a little bit more control of stats changes. So okay, so you guys don't like the all outputs being available. You just see what happens if I do this. They should just output a single incense, yeah. There we go. Should be the same stats. I didn't check the stats. Oops. So, yeah, so one other option is to keep the system as it was, where you can only take one output and then introduce a reagent that will guarantee a certain card in the outputs or preserve all of the abilities in the output. I think it takes away from all the choice. Maybe fun to do what someone else mentioned and maybe get some ability reagents back. Maybe give one for free, but make the other cost blood or other currency you want to implement. Now we're just confusing it more than anything, probably. Like pieces of their souls being retained. Let's see. I could do a mixture. Yeah, I could do a mixture of both. So instead of letting the player take all of the output cards, I could let the player take one of the output cards, but I kind of keep what I have, which is that for every input that you add to the alchemy system, you get that card back in the output as an option, but you still can only take one, right? So that means if I throw a giant squid into my alchemy, I will always get a giant squid back, and its abilities will be randomized. But instead of being able to take all of the output cards, I can only choose one. So that will cut down on the randomness, because one thing that feels really bad about the alchemy system is I've got a really good card and I put it in as an input to the alchemy system, and then my outputs don't contain that card, right? That feels very bad. So if I guarantee that all of the inputs will be transformed and presented as outputs, but only allow you to choose one, I think that kind of solves both problems. Because then I can have my pick of the litter, right? I may be going for adding a specific ability to my squid, but it may end up that the other card that I put in with the squid ended up getting something that works a little bit better, so I choose that instead. Agreed. Hello, Rin. Welcome. I like that, but I also like the ability to lose some resources somehow if you wanted more, but max it out at 2 or 3 maybe. Yeah, we could definitely consider that. That will incentivize player to put in 1 card they want and 2 they want to get rid of anyway, which I think isn't bad. Right. I think that could work. So I actually need to put back a bunch of the code that I just undid. Let's see. I actually think that I just need to, let's stage this one. This is the critical one. And then this alchemy container, I think I can just, actually, you know what? Maybe I'll do this. Alchemy container. Can I just stash those? Stash staged changes. I'll remove. Allow all outputs to be selected. Alchemy outputs. Okay. So I just stashed those changes, so if I ever want to bring them back, I can do that. But the alchemy container has been put back the way that it was. However, I'm still including all of the cards as outputs. So let's see what happens here. That just creates an imbalance. You could just dump your cards for free. I don't know what you mean by that, because if you want to get rid of cards, you have two options. You can use the alchemy system, or you can sell them. If you use the alchemy system to get rid of cards, what you're doing is you're potentially putting those abilities onto a different card, but you're losing money, right? Or you're losing, I guess, wealth is the more appropriate way to say it. So I think it's okay. Like, you have two options for dumping cards, alchemy or selling. And let's see if this works. Okay. So yeah, this squid got completely randomized. This skeleton warrior got completely randomized. And this one got completely randomized. However, maybe I want to take the incense and I put that there and the board gets reset. It could work. Let's see here. Let's put this all on there. Need money. Got a legendary frog. I got to figure out how legendary is going to work now. Apply 2 poison, applies 25% blind, reduce remaining turns of adjacent allied minion cards by 2. Okay. Okay, so let's do this. I do want to see something. Let's get a negative ability on this candle here. So we've got one negative ability. I bring this over, put this in. I put this in with the honey. That should just give me a candle out, which does not have that negative ability anymore. Cool. Now what happens if I add another ability? Is it going to get 2 negative abilities now? Oh, it became legendary. Thank you for ruining my test, game. Okay, remove that, put that in there. Should get 1 candle out. And then if I alchemize this again, will the candle have 2 negative abilities? It does, yeah. So that just removes the negative ability for that alchemy, which is fine. I think this is making a lot more sense now, though. Didn't think about the free discard. Yeah, I mean the card taking deleting system may be unbalanced. Balance is overrated. Value, yeah. Depends on the game, of course, but Vampire Survivors, for example, is unbalanced intentionally. You also lose resurrection mats, right, yeah. Generally allowing players to thin their decks at will is no bueno. Well, this is not a card game in the traditional sense. This is not a card game where as you add cards to your deck, like it dilutes some of your power. This game is all about maximizing your power through careful placement of your cards on the board. So the point of this game is actually kind of like the opposite of like a collectible card game. It's you're supposed to concentrate your build over time rather than diluting it. Like the cards that you add to your inventory, they don't have no function until you decide to use them, right? It's not like Slay the Spire or whatever. So like being able to clear cards from your deck is like totally fine because they're not in play anyway. Anything that's not on your inventory board is not in play. So basically using money to upgrade a card, right? Yeah. Yeah, you're not drawing cards. I can't believe a generic REST API client doesn't exist on Asset Lib. Oh, really? That is surprising. Well, it's your time to shine, Chris. Be a hero and create it for all of us. Anyway, so are we liking this change though? Let me just do a quick temperature check here. Do you like this change? So every input that I put into the alchemy is guaranteed as an output. It will still be randomized in terms of its turn cooldown and the abilities that it has, but the abilities are always increased by one, at least one, and you get to choose one of the outputs. So if you put an incense in, you'll always get an incense out. If you put a giant squid in, you'll always get a giant squid out. But I can still only choose one. Why didn't that giant squid get an additional ability? I gotta figure that out. Oh, maybe it did. Oh, the squid doesn't have 6 abilities naturally. Gotcha. So I can choose one, put this over here. Okay. There's one other thing that I want to test. I want to test what happens with gold here. I don't think gold is actually going to work. I may have to change this. Oh wait, maybe not. Let's see. I should get a random card out. Yeah, I did. So the gold transmuted into Grimoire. Very nice. Cool. Yes, you like it. I'll post it later today. I dig the change. This seems like the best option for the system to me. I agree also. Okay, good. All right. This is what we're going to be doing. Like, it is absolutely critical, I think, for this game that the alchemy system is absolutely like honed and perfected. So we're going to be going through a lot of changes to the alchemy system between now and release and across a couple more play tests. This is the part of the game where I can't drop the ball because it's like the entire point of the game. Everything needs to rely or revolve in some way around this alchemy system. So yeah, we're gonna spend many more hours on this, I'm sure, but I think it's continually moving in a better direction. So yeah. IDK, I slightly tend toward liking it. Okay, that's good. A slight tendency toward liking a new change is positive progress. I feel like there might be a weird exploit if you can cleverly block some upgrades. Well, that's the thing. Like, ideally, if I build my game correctly, I want the player to feel like they're exploiting the game. I want the player to feel like they understand the game rules so well that they can just absolutely break their build. And that's what I want to happen. I want players to be able to go, oh, I see how that works, and then leverage that knowledge to do something very intentional. I think that's an ideal goal. If players feel like they're exploiting my game, I will have succeeded in my game. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, it's not a bad thing, I don't think. I really like the gold now. Yeah, gold makes a lot more sense now because it's basically just a free way to get a new card. So what did we make my boy Firebelly rich with Gunforged on the winter sale? I don't think so. I don't think so. I will go buy a Gunforged. I haven't actually played any Firebelly's games. Thank you. Yeah, it's on sale right now. What's the difference between exploit and skill? Good question. I think in a traditional sense, an exploit is taking advantage of an unintended behavior. But roguelikes can be fun when you can kind of make the player feel like they're taking advantage of an unintended interaction, but the interaction was actually intended. So I do like this change. I think this is a good one. What was the next thing I wanted to do? I wanted to test something. I can't remember. I tested the gold. Oh, I need to figure out what to do with legendary cards now. Yeah, let's figure that out. Legendary cards is still kind of like an area of the game that I need to think more about. Because right now, a legendary card will have no negative abilities on it. It will also have the best crit chance, the best crit multiplier, and the best turn cooldown of all of the input cards. However, in exchange for that being massively powerful, what I do is I block legendary cards from being upgradable at all. So you can't put new enchantments on them. You can't use them in alchemy. You can't do anything with them. They're basically locked. Like as soon as an item becomes legendary, it becomes immutable, which is sort of my way of balancing it, because I don't want you to acquire a legendary which is super powerful and then just be able to keep stuffing things onto the legendary. Now, I guess you could question why not allow that. You know, we could always reintroduce the risk, like if you put a legendary card in the alchemy, it could not preserve the legendary status, you know? Or it could transfer the legendary status to a different card. You could be both a skillful exploiter like Spiffing Brit, yeah. Hello, Mark, welcome. Hello, Evan. I'm glad you're still here. Exploit early and often, the motto of every WoW player on patch day. Need to get this game in Brit's hands when it's finished. I'm going to try. Am I cooked if I launch my first game as a roguelike deck builder? It seems like a very popular genre. Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on the whole like marketing thing or like finding market fit or whatever, but just from a player's perspective, like if I love roguelike deck builders, I probably can't get enough roguelike deck builders, right? Because like the thing is, even if there's, you know, 100 really good games in the genre, if somebody really loves that genre, many of those 100 games are not going to be interesting to the person, right? And then of the games that are interesting to that person, they're going to get burnt out on them, right? They're going to see everything. They're going to unlock everything. There's going to be nothing new for them to do. And so a new roguelike deck builder game that fits that person's interests and offers new content and new challenges for them is going to be something that they want, right? So I'm not really convinced that the saturation of a genre is much of a problem. Again, it comes down to execution, right? The FPS genre is saturated, but if you make a really good first-person shooter, it doesn't matter how many other first-person shooters there are, you know? It's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Diablo 4 has a similar thing that where you can sanctify an item to get a big random affix boost, but it also makes the item immutable, no adding sockets, etc. I actually don't not like legendary cards. I always hated getting my desired output card as legendary. I like upgrading enchanting cards way more. So what should we do with a legendary card then? What should a legendary card actually do? Or we could just get rid of the concept of legendary cards. I kind of don't like that though, because I do want to have that dopamine hit moment where like you get something super special. But I'm open to suggestions on how legendary cards can be modified to be a little bit more interesting. Hello, Happy New Year to you as well, Bubblegum Lord. The good ones are few and far between. I have so many Survivor type games, yeah. Clouds the mind. For the first game, make the game you can make. Yeah, that's good advice, for sure. Welcome, by the way, Light Tiramisu. So many is relative to my library size, yeah. Hello, Neozoid, welcome back. Good to see you. Hello, Lenzo. I've been fighting procrastination going through your co-op multiplayer game course, and it's been really insightful so far. Now I'm procrastinating by watching the stream. Well, okay. But I'm glad you're liking the course, though. Thank you for letting me know. And welcome to the stream. Great to have you here. I've heard that it's pointless to be a perfectionist to try to write the best code right away. What do you think about that? I think that's true. I think that's true. You should only write the code that you need at the moment, really. So the right approach most times is to just get something working, and then as the needs of your code base change, that's when you look at refactoring and re-architecting things appropriately. But generally speaking, I think it's a good idea to just get something working with the simplest code possible, and then refactor if necessary later. And even when you do the refactoring, you still should have that mindset of like, what is the minimal necessary refactor I need to do to support this? And a lot of that's going to come with experience too. Like leaving your refactoring open to further extensibility is going to be something that can be useful. Like you can have a mind for the future of your code base without building all of the future features you need at once in like a big, perfectly architected system. But yeah, you should definitely only be writing the code that you need in the moment. Hello, the Dollite, welcome back. I frequently get disheartened when I see other games in my genre that I feel are really well done because I feel like, oh, I can never top that. I've tried to change my perspective to being inspired. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like anything, you know. You gotta practice, practice game development, practice art, practice all that stuff. And if you see a game that's better than yours or that looks better than yours, then that indicates that there's probably something you can learn from it. So yeah, it's all about making positive progress, I would say. What if you had legendary abilities that they would gain? I could do that, yeah. You could have something that makes the card have some special VFX or flair, and that's the legendary state. So no player power, but still a reward. That would be kind of weird though, wouldn't it? To just put a cosmetic legendary status on it that doesn't do anything. Maybe you have legendaries have abilities that are untransferable. That is an interesting idea. So a legendary card could lock all of the abilities in place so that if you used it in future alchemies, none of those abilities would be changed. Been away for a while. What's happening with Alchemortis? Right now we're just we're still iterating on the alchemy system, trying to resolve some of the problems that still exist with the alchemy system. Very hard to perfect something when you don't know what it is yet. Yeah. What does a legendary ability look like? That's a good question. Software in general is an iterative process. Yes, that's true. If your goal is to be perfect, you will never achieve success, assuming you're human. Yeah. Everything is always trade-offs, right? I don't think there's anything really there's not really such a thing as perfection in this world, at least. Everything is always a trade-off between competing concerns. Yes, you're right, because then scripts appear in manager projects. I'm curious, how much prior experience do you have with game development before you got into Godot? I got into Godot in 2013 or 2014, something like that. I think it was 2013. And I had been developing games since I was like 14 before that. So what was that? I think I was... How old was I in 2013? I don't remember. Was it 2013? No, it can't have been 2013. No, 2017. 2017 is when I got into Godot, not 2013. 2017 is when I got into Godot, and I started work when I was 14, which was like 2008. So, what was that? 9 years? 9 years before getting into Godot, and then been using Godot since 2017. Maybe Legendary adds more stability, yeah. 2014. Yeah, I was wrong. So 2017 is when I got into Godot. 2008 is when I kind of like got into game development with Game Maker. So yeah. It's been a while. I've been at it for quite a while. Almost 20 years, I guess. What if you used legendaries to control the alchemical process somehow, allowing to manually tick stats up and down prior to alchemization? Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting idea. The thing is that just requires a whole new systems to be built, which I can do, but I'm hesitant to go that direction because it's going to add a bunch of scope to the game. Legendaries could... Yeah, I don't know what to do about legendaries, honestly. If the core problem is that legendary cards can't be modified, then one easy fix would just allow legendary cards to be modified. Or if I don't want to make it that easy, what I could do is I could introduce like an alchemical reagent that strips the legendary status from a card, and then it retains all of its stats. It just is no longer legendary, so now it can be modified again. Maybe that would work. I don't know. What are we going to do about these legendary cards? I think legendary abilities is an interesting idea as well. We could do legendary abilities. I mean, I think that would be relatively easy to do. It would be relatively easy to do because I already have the systems in place to build abilities and add them to cards and so on and so forth. And it could be a very interesting way of getting builds, you know? Maybe legendary abilities is the way to go. So a legendary card can have all the best stats from the inputs plus a legendary ability added to it. But then there's still the question of what should we do about legendary cards being immutable? That's a good question. I started Godot game dev on Dreams, or started game dev on Dreams, and then picked up Godot when I realized Dreams was dead in 2022-ish. Oh, nice. This is true. Why did you choose Godot over GameMaker, though? Godot honestly just feels so much more mature than GameMaker. And again, my last experience with GameMaker was around 2017 when I picked up Godot. But at the time when I was using GameMaker Studio, it lacked things like a vector math library. Like there was no such thing as like a vector 2 type in GameMaker. Maybe that's changed already, but you know, it seems pretty basic that you would need a way to do vector math for a game, and that was not a built-in feature of GameMaker Studio, for instance. GameMaker Studio did not really have a proper physics system at the time that I was using it either. It was very difficult to get physics to work. And then the scripting and whatnot was just way too loosey-goosey. It was just like very easy to create a mess of your project. And then when I found Godot and it's got all of this out-of-the-box functionality and it's got a very intuitive scene tree structure and it works with C#, I was like, oh, this is actually a lot better of an experience as a developer. I started in like 2009 with XNA. Yeah, I remember around that time trying to figure out how to use it, but I was such a beginner at programming that I didn't even know how to like set up an IDE or development environment or anything. Scope creep is our friend. Maybe think of legendaries as a synergy build. Maybe if a legendary card is in the pot, you always get -1 card, so there's a chance of losing that legendary. Yeah, that could work. Make some abilities untransferable, but legendaries can accept abilities from other cards. Yeah. Please take my message off screen. Damn, that's wild. I first gave Unity a try in 2017 and made a project for high school. That was the first and only game I ever finished. Nice. Started game dev in primary school, then I stopped for a few years. I got back into it in 2020. Very nice, yeah. A lot of people start in Unity, yes. Godot is amazing, real joy to work with. I agree, wholeheartedly. I was using Scratch in primary, and now I'm using Turbo Warp. Right, I remember you mentioning that. I think you could allow them to be alchemized, but the legendary card can't be moved from it, just more added to it. Okay. I started with the Games Factory Click Team Fusion. Tried Unity in 2018, but my old laptop wasn't handling loading time very well. Then 2020, 2021, started with Godot and stayed till today. Many such cases. Yeah, I guess I don't have enough experience with all the other engines that are available, but coming from GameMaker, which is like a built for 2D engine, going to Godot, I actually think Godot is just a better 2D engine than GameMaker. And so, I don't know, I kind of feel confident saying that Godot is probably the best 2D engine around that you could use. Again, haven't really used Unity, but if Godot beats a dedicated 2D engine like GameMaker, then I have to assume that would have beat everything else in 2D as well, but maybe I'm wrong. I like Godot. That's personal preference. I didn't know anything that was in college. Can't speak for a professional level of coding, but I find GameMaker works for what I need it for. Making my landscaping survivors in GameMaker. Oh, nice. I've used Godot though, and it's quite nice also. Yeah, I mean, obviously GameMaker is a capable engine. Like, there's many successful games made in GameMaker, but it just felt kind of like, yeah, immature is the word I would use. It doesn't have all the tools that I would expect an engine to have. I've tried using the engine to fold multiple times, but I just can't get into it. How to use Unity for my bachelor thesis and hated every second of it. Used Godot for 5 minutes and fell in love. Yeah. That's basically how I was. I mean, when I started using Godot, I was even using the 3.0 alpha. So I heard through some like game dev news or something that this Godot engine, which has been around for a while, is doing a major overhaul and it's now in 3.0 alpha. And I was like, Godot, interesting. I'm going to download this and try it. So I tried it in the 3.0 alpha days when it was like super buggy and like stuff was breaking all the time. And I still absolutely fell in love with the engine despite those issues because I could see what they were going for and I could experience, you know, their design philosophy, for lack of a better word. And I just think it just made so much sense to me. Hello, Zath. I wanted to know if you plan to work on another Godot course this year. We will see. Honestly, that's going to all depend on how the Alchemortis launch goes. If Alchemortis makes $1 billion, you will never hear from me again. And if it doesn't make that much money, then I'll probably be doing another course to try to make some money. So we'll see. I will also, so it's changed a lot over years, but I can't specify exactly how. It's added tons of stuff. Yeah, I believe that. I mean, it's been 9 years since I used it, so I would imagine that GameMaker has probably addressed a lot of its deficiencies, so my opinion could very much be outdated. After seeing games like Repo, Lethal Company, Peak, and others get a lot of traction, realize that simple mechanics with multiplayer create a lot of fun moments. So I want to make something fun. We'll have to come up with a good game idea first. For now, I'm just following along with the course. Yeah, the problem with multiplayer, though, is that you definitionally need to get enough players playing it. I mean, I guess if you make like a friend slop game, it's a little bit easier because then your friends can just, or somebody can just grab their friends and go. But if you want to make a multiplayer game with like matchmaking, you kind of need to have the active player base to make that work. And I think that to me is just exceedingly risky. I don't think I'm going to ever attempt to make a multiplayer like matchmaking based game. Just because like, I mean, you're just asking for an immediate flop. I mean, there are AAA games that have like online matchmaking that fail after like a month after spending, you know, tens of millions of dollars. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole, but like, yeah, like a online co-op game that you can make where if two friends want to play, they can just peer-to-peer connect to each other. That's totally fine, I think. Firebelly only in it for the money. Yeah, dang grifter. Mostly just play with friends, forgot to specify that. Yeah, I think something it can still be difficult, I think, if it doesn't have a single player mode. If you have to have a friend to play it, you're already kind of narrowing your potential audience. But I think it's definitely a lot safer than making like a multiplayer matchmaking based game, you know. Multiplayer is complicated and sort of cheap. It makes it easier to make the game fun because the fun is built in with the friendship, but harder to actually dev. Maybe. Hope my landscaping survivors is fun with multiplayer. I'm designing it for both though. Very nice, yeah. I would like to make a co-op game at some point. That's for sure. I originally, I mean, maybe some of you remember this, but I was, before I made Alchemortis, I was prototyping a multiplayer, like roguelite RPG. Okay, so let's see. So we need to figure out what to do with the legendary cards here. I like the idea of legendary abilities. Do we want to do that? Then I'd have to build up a library of legendary abilities, but that's probably okay. We could also add some more reagents. There are some interesting reagents that people mentioned in the chat, like being able to decompose a card onto a reagent, card ability onto a reagent, so that you could put that ability onto something else. I think that's a good idea. And then there was a reagent to preserve all of the abilities of a card so that only new abilities would be added to it and all the existing abilities would remain unchanged. Hard to convince strangers to play your games, especially if you're not famous. Landscaping survivors, yeah. If you need money, then instead of just cards, make credit cards. All right. All right, I'll think about it. I want to make a multiplayer platformer so badly, but networking hurts my soul. Yeah, that's why I really wish the Godot team would try like to just make like a world-class developer-friendly multiplayer integration where it becomes like super easy to do it. Easier said than done, I'm sure, but I think they could do it. I think they could do it. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick 3-minute break, and when I come back, we'll figure out something to work on with respect to the alchemy system. Maybe it will be some of those reagents that I mentioned. Maybe we'll start working on legendary abilities for the legendary cards. Yeah, I don't know. We'll figure it out, but I'll be right back in just 3 minutes, and we will continue on. Alrighty, I am back. Yeah, there are open source solutions to a lot of networking stuff. I've been really interested in playing around with like space-time. That looked really interesting. I think there might even be a space-time Godot integration with C# even. I would really love to try that at some point. It looks cool. I have absolutely no idea how to make multiplayer game, but I'll figure it out when I get to that point. This is the backend for working with the data. I believe it has some documentation for integrating with Godot. Oh, Nakama. Yeah. The thing that was compelling about Spacetime DB is that it seemed like it handled a lot of stuff for you. Like you just interact with their APIs and then it just like magically works with multiplayer, which is pretty cool. But I don't have any experience with it. I gotta try it out sometime. Anyway, I kind of like the idea of having legendary abilities on legendary cards. So maybe we'll just play around with that. I mean, that could be interesting. Oh yeah, Spacetime to be, or remember seeing the video. Okay. Alchemy. Let's do some legendary abilities. If anyone has any legendary ability ideas, feel free to put them in the chat. Your idea could just make it into the game. Okay, ability. Where do I want to put this? Let's make a new folder. Legendary. New file. Legendary abilities. I'm just going to define all of these in this way. Legendary abilities. This is game.data.ability. What the heck? Guess we'll just call this abilities. Okay. Obviously, we're going to need to do a bunch of other things here, but abilities. So we got to do set as negative ability. So we're going to have to do something like this. Public bool is legendary ability. So I think what I might need to do at this point is maybe I should use an enum for this instead. But let's not worry about that just yet. Okay. Yes, cat, can I help you? Come here. Come on. What are you doing? You come up here like you want to sit, and then you go away? What's going on? What are you doing? What? I'm right here. Come on. Okay, I don't know what this cat is doing. Cannot be altered during alchemy, +1 to all stats. That could work. That could work. I was playing modded MC the other day and there was a stat gem with passive ability that didn't have a description. So I had to dig through the source code and find its description and code. It felt like a hacker, man. Nice. When you check the mod description on CurseForge to find a link that led to the exact script where the descriptions were. Nice. Show cat. Here he is. There he is. Are you a good boy? You good boy? Show cat. Oh yeah, I did that. Anytime you apply poison, apply 2x that amount. Moral of the story, RTFM, yeah. Legendary ability, 1 fire damage, but it grows permanently by 1 for each execution of the card. The longer you have it, the more powerful it becomes. Yeah, that could work. Bald cat, yep. Thank you. Well, we could do that. Let's just start building some legendary abilities. That would become really powerful, that fire one. That is an interesting idea. Still, the problem is I just don't want to make getting a legendary card a game over button. Unless you got it at the end, then oof. That's true. Yeah, you'd have to get it at the beginning, and you'd also have to use it on your board. So... here's what I could do. Yeah, I could... The legendary abilities don't necessarily have to be strict positives. I could do something like... I could make that fire card that Wuya suggested, but then I could increase the turn cooldown of the card in the same legendary ability. So it kind of like offsets the power a little bit. You won't be able to get as many executions out of the ability as normal, but it still grows in power. Let's try that. I'm gonna see if I can do this. Let's see. var permanent fire permanent fire growth is equal to new composed ability. Okay. I actually don't know how to do this. I think I have to do this. Public bool track permanent tracker. Public bool is permanent tracker. So if I do a var execution count provider is equal to new execution count provider. And we're going to do is permanent tracker equals true. Var value scalar is equal to new value scalar. Execution count provider. Value scalar dot set. Set multiplier 2, or just 1. Var dynamic fire is equal to new new dynamic magnitude ability. Value scalar, new fire 0. Okay. Return ability builder dot, or no, new ability builder dot ability configuration. Abilities equals execution count provider dynamic fire. Oh no, this is fine. Execution count provider fire. And then scaling func tier. We're just going to do an empty scaling function for now. Apply dynamic fire. No, let's do value scalar dot get value. Fire. Fire applied. Fire applied increases, no. Increases by 1 permanently each time this ability is executed. Okay. If it's too powerful, maybe increase the cooldown of the card by 1 as well. That way the cards become slower. Yeah. We're on the same page. Awesome. Hello, Deca Lift. Welcome back. There are many ways to abuse that ability. There are many ways to abuse the ability with increased cooldown. Evil Grin. Yeah, that's true. The hinting feature in the IDE can be so distracting. Keep increasing the enemy CD so they don't get to play. Ooh, yeah. Maybe if the player health falls below 50%, all cards on your board gain 10% cooldown reduction. Oh. That is an interesting one. Yeah, lots of good ideas here. So I need to make So there's going to be a couple of problems with this. One problem is I need to make this increase the turn cooldown, but I'm mostly just interested in checking this out. So we're going to say abilities is equal to permanent fire growth. Okay. Let's go to my run manager. Populate player cards. I just want to see if this works first. I should probably be doing a duplicate here. Am I not doing a alchemy negative abilities? Am I not doing this? I may have discovered a problem. Negative abilities dot, oh, I am duplicating it, okay. It's very important that the abilities get duplicated. One problem though is that object reference not set to an instance of object. Oh, oops. Here. So one thing that is interesting is if I were to alchemize this legendary ability over, fire applied increases by 1 permanently each time this ability is executed. Oh, wait a minute. Value scaler dot set additional value 1. We'll move the execution count provider after. So if I were to alchemize that ability onto a card, it would need to retain its data, which might be a little bit tricky. I think I'm doing that with the Hellspawn egg. Combat Victory Transform. Yeah. So my system doesn't really have a good way of transferring like internal data to an ability over to a duplicate of that ability. One thing that I might be able to do is inside of this ability configuration, what I could potentially do is in this ability factory here, which contains an ability, or which returns an ability configuration, I could potentially return or require, not require, but include a duplication function in here. So it would be like public func composed ability duplication func, something like that, get init. And then what I can do in my composed ability is I could say, okay, var composed ability is equal to that. I can do the ability factory. I have the duplication func here, so this would be private read-only func composed ability duplication func here. And then I could do duplication func dot invoke composed ability, and then I can return composed ability here. No overload for invoke. Oh, this needs to be an action. Action. So then I say duplication func is equal to that. So I can modify the duplication inside of this duplicate internal, I think. So then what I could do in here is if this needs to be to support duplication, I could say duplication func is equal to composed ability. Yeah, the problem is I don't really have a good way of setting the execution count provider. I guess I would have to do it like this. Then I could set the count on it. So I could support adding some duplication logic here. I mean, that might be the way to do it, but I don't know. I'm kind of going off on a tangent. We will worry about that later. I guess I'll leave the duplication function in place for now. I don't think that would be an issue if you could move if you can't move legendary abilities to non-legendary cards. Yeah, maybe we don't even need to do that. Right? Maybe we don't even need to do that. Worry about legendary abilities being alchemized over. Anyway, yeah, we'll think about that. But anyway, there is one other problem here. But let's just go ahead and test this. Apply 1 fire, fire applied increases by 1. So let's just make sure that that works. Great, boss fight. That's okay. So that should apply 1 fire. Oh wait, it applied 4? This should apply 5. Okay. Candle applied, oh, it critted, that's why. But it did only apply 1 fire, okay. Now this has reset. Right, because I forgot to update the execution count provider. If is permanent tracker, return. Okay, so that should fix that. That should fix that. I need to turn off this debug notoriety level. It's gonna drive me nuts. So I go here. Go to this guy over here. Put my candle there. Let's just see what happens. Okay, I lost, but now this is applying 7 fire. Sacrifice the squid. Cool. All right, so the problem now is that I need to increase the turn cooldown. How am I going to do that? There is a way to do it. I'm just not sure. Non-combat composed ability. Self-turn cooldown increase. Self-turn cooldown modification base penalty. So this is the problem. This needs to be a non-combat composed ability. I don't think it's going to work. I mean, I could potentially... So I can't put the self-turn cooldown increase inside the composed ability. It needs to be a non-combat composed ability. However, it still needs to be a part of this ability because I don't want to have 2 separate abilities listed on the card. This should all be one ability. So, but turn cooldown is increased by 8 or something. So what I would need to do is I might be able to get away with this. turn cooldown increase is equal to new non-combat composed ability. Base penalty is 8. Cooldown modification, base penalty. Return ability builder. I don't think I need a description function here, so we'll just do string.empty. And we're also not going to scale it at all. What happens if I do this? So we've got composed abilities inside of composed abilities. I don't think that's going to work, but we'll try it out. It did not work. So if I go to my get all non base card, if I do get all update non-combat abilities. Do I need this? Find all implementations. Okay, I guess I do need that. Base card. Get all composed abilities. So the problem here, get all composed abilities. I might have to rework the system. not rework it entirely, but so I've got composed abilities. This permanent fire growth, it's what gets added to the card's composed abilities. So if I go to my base card and I show add composed abilities, this just gets added to a list. Collect abilities recursively. Composite ability. So I'm adding those abilities to the composed abilities, right? But the problem is, what I'm not currently handling is I'm not currently handling the case where a composed ability, which is this base composed ability, it could have another composed ability in its abilities list. And that would need to be broken down or considered as well. But I'm not doing that. I'm doing a very top level approach to looking for the composed abilities. So collect abilities recursively. For ability and source abilities, target collection, add ability. If ability is composite ability, get abilities to execute, ability parents, collect abilities recursively. Okay, so that part works, I think. I think the main problem here is when I call get all composed abilities, it's only exclude hidden. Get all composed abilities, excluding end chance. Is this used for the description? Yeah, okay. So inside of get all composed abilities, what this is doing is this is just looking at the very top level of the composed abilities here. Projected composed abilities. What I need to do instead... Oh, this is going to be a nightmare. Get all combat executable abilities. This should work. This should work. So if I go to my base card, get all composed abilities, this should iterate over the composed abilities and decompose them in place. Yeah, so I think what I can do... Oh, man. Oh my gosh. I just want to see where eye composite ability is used. Conditional ability decorator, eye composite ability. Okay, all right. This is getting a little bit hairy, but I think the main thing that I need to do is get all composed abilities here. I'm going to iterate over this. So for each var ability in composed abilities, all composed abilities dot add ability. Oh, I actually need to do this a little bit differently. Get all flattened abilities. This is nutty. Cooldown is part of combat, I think. It's not. It's something that permanently affects the card whether it's in combat or not. So that's why it needs to be a non-combat ability. I mean, I guess what non-combat and combat means to a player is different than what it means in the codebase. What a non-combat ability means in the codebase is not that the ability doesn't affect the combat. The non-combat ability in the codebase is an ability that changes something permanently about the card, meaning that it has no function if it's executed in combat. Its function entirely comes from modifying the card in some kind of way. So increasing the card turn cooldown, it as a result of having an ability on it is something that's like a permanent change or a semi-permanent change. Is a change that exists as long as that ability is on the card. And so combat encounter to combat encounter and execution to execution, that number doesn't change. So that's what a non-combat ability is in my game. Man, this is nutty. This is nutty. Why am I having such a hard time with this? Oops. I don't know why this is. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this very easily. Get all combat executable composed abilities. Get all composed abilities. Maybe I could just change it in here. I gotta try something here. 1 second. Ability builder. Legendary abilities. What happens if I just slap this on here? Ability builder dot poison 100. So this is a composed ability. I wish I could describe this problem better, but it's basically the way how my abilities are nested. I don't currently support being able to add a composed ability within a composed ability. It should be supported in theory, but there's something way about how the code is working that is not making it very straightforward. So let me see. If this applies 100 poison, we're good. Oh, it did. Interesting. Okay. So that is working. So I can support composed abilities inside of other abilities. Like this poison. So I thought that would work. So this works then. This all composed abilities here. It's getting all those. It's doing what? Get all composed abilities. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, because when it goes to get the all combat executable abilities, it excludes anything that's a non-combat ability, and then it collects those abilities recursively. This basically just flattens the ability list into a list of individual abilities to execute in order. So get all combat executable abilities. So really the problem is it's actually a very narrow problem. I don't have a way of supporting non-combat abilities that are nested within combat abilities. That's the important distinction here. So what I need to do in my update non-combat abilities here is I need to, for each of our ability and get all composed abilities. This is the problem here because these composed abilities that are returned could contain within them abilities that are non-combat abilities. Get all flattened abilities. Am I duplicating this on accident? No, I'm not. Okay. If ability is a non-combat ability, var flattened abilities is equal to ability to get all flattened abilities here. Flattened abilities. If, let's see, var, oh, this would have to be recursive as well. Son of a biscuit. Why is this so difficult? Fudge. Good morning, Emerson. Sometimes my genius is an almost frightening moment. Yeah. Well, I think this code, a lot of this code could probably be streamlined. A lot of my confusion is coming from just a bunch of methods being named slightly differently, and they do slightly different things. I think it probably could be streamlined, but I'm also thinking, so basically my need is to recursively collect all of the non-combat abilities. Collect abilities recursively. Ability is composite ability. Composite ability. Then we grab all the abilities to execute. We collect abilities recursively. Collect abilities recursively. Oh my gosh, dude. Get all combat executable abilities. Okay, I'm very close. I'm very close to being able to do something here. I think if I do something like public list base card ability, get all flattened non-combat abilities, collect abilities recursively, get all composed abilities where X is... Nope, that's not what I want to do. I think what I want to do is I want to add this collect abilities recursively here. I want to add it like a filter function in here. Func base card ability bool filter is equal to null. If filter dot invoke ability is equal to true, we're going to go ahead and add that to the target collection. Or no, not equal to false. Because this could be either null or true. So really the only thing we want to ignore is false. Because if the filter is not present, we want to add the ability. And if the filter returns true, we want to add the ability. Okay, so then here, get all flattened non-combat abilities. Collect abilities recursively. We don't need this where here. Get all composed abilities. And then the filter function is going to be ability here. We're going to do ability is I non-combat ability. Okay, So then in update non-combat abilities here, what we're going to do is we're going to say non-combat abilities is equal to, this is going to be equal to what? Get all flattened non-combat abilities here. That we can get rid of this. We can make this var. I think that will work. So now this should recursively reach as far down into the depths of the ability tree as it needs to collect all of the non-combat abilities. So with that change, I'm fairly confident that now this candle is going to have a turn cooldown of 16. And it didn't work. Object reference not set to an instance of object. Uh-oh, target board execute. Oh, you know what? Maybe I did it wrong. I think I did my filtering wrong, actually. I think, oh man. Nope, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Collect abilities recursively. Oh, I was already here. So the thing is, I'm trying to collect only composed abilities. I think I'm trying to do something that's a little bit different than this. So let's put that back. I'm trying to collect composed abilities that are non-combat abilities. But the way that I set up this filter is it was actually filtering out the sub-abilities. So if I go back to my legendary abilities here, this self-turn cooldown modification, this is not a non-combat ability. This self-turn cooldown increases the non-combat ability. So this is an ability here, and it contains within it this self-turn cooldown increased ability. So what's happening with the filter that I had set up is that it is it's not going to be including this ability. It will only include this top level ability, but this is the ability that actually changes the turn cooldown. So if I'm excluding that from the list, that's a problem. So what I need to do is I need to I don't actually know how to do this. I do not know how to do this. Well, I guess I'm just gonna spend the stream being stuck. I guess I'm just gonna spend the stream being stuck. This is just very weird. It's just very weird because of the way this is nested. So this is a composed ability that is nested within this permanent fire growth composed ability. And this permanent fire growth composed ability, it has the dynamic fire, which is a dynamic magnitude ability, the execution count provider, but also this composed ability, which itself has a list of abilities here. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to basically recursively extract all of the non-combat composed abilities that should be applied no matter what level they're nested at. Because right now I can only support top level non-combat abilities, but what I need to do is I need to reach in to all of the composed abilities and find recursively if they have any non-combat abilities in their ability list. But something to keep in mind as well is that this non-combat ability here could include another non-combat composed ability in its list. So it's kind of like a tree. It is a tree that needs to be traversed to find all the references. So basically, I just need a flattened list of all of the non-combat abilities. However, the way that my current recursive ability collection works, it does not support that. Oh, and I also deleted something important. So it currently does not support that, because if I collect all abilities recursively, it's always going to add that ability. So I can't really do any filtering on this. Get all combat executable composed abilities. Yeah, again, this is just top level here. I almost need to just probably do a different approach. So I wonder if I could fix it by just doing this. But here's the thing that's bothering me. Get all combat executable composed abilities. I think I need to do it both ways. I need to exclude any non-combat composed ability from what is going on here? I need to do a look at this code. I'm seeing some redundancy here. So this is flattening all the abilities, and this is get all combat executable composed abilities. I'm iterating over all the composed abilities and then collecting them recursively. But I'm also just flattening these abilities here. So I think this could be simplified. This loop could just iterate over all the flattened composed abilities. That's interesting. Hello, Hyro. Welcome back. Good to see you. Hello, Snow Hornet. Good to see you as well. I think I need to take a look at this ability system. I think it has become a little bit too complex. I think it's become a little bit too complex. And I think there's some room for simplification. The other problem is that this get all combat executable abilities, this is just doing a top level filter as well. So it's doing get all composed abilities, which is just taking the top level abilities. So I also need to like recursively filter through that to filter out any non-combat composed abilities because I don't want them to be executed. So I need to make a note of this. To do, need to filter out all non-combat composed ability recursively. And then the same for get flat non-combat abilities. I need to do this as well. To do, need to filter out all combat need to filter to only non-combat composed ability cursively. And maybe this should actually be I non-combat ability. Man. Well, this is going to be a little bit of a problem. I don't even remember where this is used. Did I delete the spot where it's used? Did I delete the spot where it's used? Let's look at my base card here. Oh yeah, I did delete it. Right. So what this would have done is this would have just filtered for all non-combat abilities. Okay, I'm gonna have to think about this. There's a lot that I need to do here to address this. So we kind of got sidetracked with the legendary abilities here, but I think this is going to be a critical thing to fix because I do want to be able to support composed abilities being used within composed abilities, like to have composed abilities that belong to other composed abilities, to be able to have like this chain of sub-composed abilities, and that should just work in the system. And right now, it's not going to just work. So I need to change some things about how the abilities are collected in that base card class here to get that to work. But yeah, so I think we'll experiment more with legendary abilities probably tomorrow. Probably tomorrow's stream. And what else? But I like the alchemy changes that have been made currently. I do. So it's just a matter of getting this legendary ability system working. And I may not even ultimately end up using legendary abilities for legendary cards. But the changes that I'm going to need to make to support at least the legendary that I'm building now are going to be good for the whole game. So I'm going to go ahead and make that change probably this afternoon, see if I can get it to work. And then, yeah, tomorrow we'll be continuing on with that legendary stuff, hopefully. But that's it for the stream today. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for being here. If you're interested, you could check out Alchemortis on Steam and wishlist it. It's a dark fantasy roguelite auto battler. And yeah, I would appreciate if you wishlisted it. You could check out support for Patreon, supporting me on Patreon. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the videos, join the Discord. Everything's linked below. So if you're like, hey, how can I help Firebelly? I really like what Firebelly's doing. I want to support him. Every way you can do that is linked in the description below. So check those out. Very much appreciate that. And I will talk to you tomorrow. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.